Every now and then a story comes along that calls the ideal of journalistic objectivity into question. Right now, that story is the rise of Donald Trump, which has an increasingly large portion of the press passing harsh judgment. Adam has more.
Maybe it's his recent refusal to condemn former KKK leader David Duke.
I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists.
Maybe it's the violence at his rallies.
Today we have to be so nice, so nice. We always have to be so nice.
Or maybe it's the fact that he just retweeted a quote from Benito Mussolini and the accusation that he kept a book of Hitler's speeches bedside. Whatever the cause, a growing segment of the media is treating Donald Trump's rise not as a political phenomenon, but a moral problem.
They invited evil in, and now evil is taking over.
The Boston Globe editorial page says Trump is reviving some of the ugliest traditions in American politics. New York Times columnist Roger Cohen decries Trump's taste for violence and consistent inhumanity. And BuzzFeed News editor Ben Smith says it's okay to call Trump, say, a mendacious racist. For the record, the moral opprobrium is also coming from the right.
When Adolf Hitler did it, if you read Mein Kampf, he spelled it all out. But the people didn't want to listen to that. They just wanted somebody to solve their problems.
But former New York Times editor Jill Abramson says there's a journalistic risk here.
I am not one, especially in news stories, to advocate using loaded language. Certainly labeling a candidate a racist or a demagogue, those are loaded terms.
Still, barring a striking change in Trump's rhetoric or in the behavior of his supporters, we'll probably hear more loaded language in the months ahead.
Well, that's an issue, Adam, because we were talking about this earlier in the week. When questioning Donald Trump, do you use words like racist or xenophobe? Do you say the things that he appears to be, or do you couch the question just so he has to, because it appears that terminology fits, but is it really a journalist's place to be putting it that way?
Jill Abramson said something else really interesting in that story that David Folkenflik did for NPR. That's where we got the sound from. She said, if Trump says something that is clearly bigoted or racially tinged, then you press his campaign on the details of the comments in question. And what's important to me is the first part of that the notion that we can say, okay, he's saying something that is clearly bigoted, but we're not allowed to describe it that way because we wouldn't be doing our jobs right if we did. I think sometimes in the press, and I'm coming from an alt-weekly background before GBH, so I have a very different perspective here. Sometimes we're so afraid of looking biased that we choose not to be accurate. This is a really unique year. The stakes are very high, and I think it's a good year in which to make accurate description the priority.
I may come from the old school side of this, but I think I would side with Jill Abramson on this. The old line about our role as journalists is to show, not tell. And to me, when you start to try to label someone, then you're telling them this is what you should think about this person and or that subject it might be. I think you're on much safer ground as a journalist to be able to, in this particular case, recount incidents. If he says something that's offensive, racially offensive, then perhaps you talk to people who are expert in that area and be able to let the reader or the listener or viewer come to that conclusion because you've shown the evidence. You haven't told them what you need to think. I think labeling is not necessary, and I don't think we should go down that path.
Well, it's interesting that some outlets have gone even farther, right? Was it Huffington Post or BuzzFeed? Huffington Post, I think, that has a little, boilerplate at the end of a story saying, essentially, David Duke, I was about to say, but Donald Trump is a mendacious racist. Part of the problem with that is it violates show, don't tell. Part of the problem is it's not going to sway anybody. The people who are Donald Trump supporters have already made it eminently clear they do not trust the mainstream media, and they think that the mainstream media is, out to get him. This is only going to confirm that suspicion. This is only going to make his support stronger among his really core base.
Well, I write a column for WGBH News, and I've settled on racist demagogue, but it's an
You're a columnist,
it's an opinion column, exactly. I'm not sure exactly I mean, I think it would be a different standard if I was writing news reports. On the other hand, I think that this old-fashioned notion of not reporting on a really dangerous development like this with a strong point of view kind of goes to the heart of why the public no longer trusts the media. It's we're always pulling back and not describing what's clearly in front of us. I believe in show, not tell, but show. Don't pull back. Don't try to pretend that the Trump phenomenon is anything like a normal development,
Yeah, I mean,
because it isn't.
People have gone way out on a limb. I mean, comparing him to Hitler and other, tyrants. So
Well,
it's
you
not
know-
like everybody is held back.
And if you're an opinion columnist, that's your right. That's your prerogative to do that. But yeah, I think you're right. The investigation of the racist statements, the investigation of the supporters and where they come from and what it is that they're responding to. There's so much coverage that can be done that can illuminate what he's saying.
Let me ask you and you a question. What about the context that is going to be provided, anyone who's covering the Trump campaign? Are you allowed, if you're a reporter, as you two see it, to say something like, this was just the latest in a long series of racially incendiary comments made by Donald Trump? Because that is both showing and telling.
Right.
You're highlighting things he's done in the past, you're providing important context, but you're also passing a sort of judgment. Would you two be okay with that?
Well, yes, because the racially incendiary referred to the comments that he made, which I think, again, are on their face. But to say this is the latest comment from a racist is a very different thing.
I agree.
Yeah.